BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone had a good weekend. And there is one real piece of Zodiac Killer news that I would like to share with you. And I have to give a shout out to Bruce, who has corresponded with me a lot. He also provided a lot of the material for the episode I did on the disappearance of William Higgins, who is Bruce's father, and that was the first time anyone had contacted me about doing an episode on one of their relatives. I have one out here on this channel on the case of William Higgins. But in our correspondences, Bruce also shared with me a series of articles that were written about the Swindle murders that occurred in 1964, the murders of Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle, and some people believe that that crime was committed by the Zodiac Killer, other people do not. And I will be doing a special bonus episode of Black Box Online Radio tomorrow to anyone who's listening to this live on the Swindle murders, and if you're listening to this in the near future or the distant future, I will have an episode out on the murders of Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle, so you can always like, subscribe, and follow along with all of these true crime discussions here. And of course, this show is available for free downloads at LaunchPad 1. There's a link to that in the description box. You can download the audio version as a pure podcast. And a great way to support all of these efforts is to go over to the BuyMeACoffee.com page. There's a link to that in the description box. It's under the name BlackBoxNed88, but the easiest way to do it is just to find the link that has been posted here. And if you make a contribution or donation to help support this show, you will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday, and I'll get to your shout-outs later on. But there's also something new that has come out recently, and I would like to give a shout-out to the YouTube channel Forensic Astrologer. And as you guys heard, I run a channel called AstroPsych 400. I am totally open to talking about astrology, but I don't really have a lot of comments on the observations that Forensic Astrologer made in their episode Zodiac Killer Crime Charts, His Real Identity and Description. And there were two people who participated in this, Valerie Evans and Grace Wilson. Shout outs to them by name. And I can't comment too much on their astrological readings here, but I would like to look at the observations that they made about the Zodiac Killer that do not require astrology and star signs and the patterns and the planets and looking at the sun and the moon and how they're positioned in the sky. I don't have much to say about that, but I would like to know your response to the profile that they have created and their observations about the Zodiac Killer mystery. And the Zodiac was a serial killer that operated in 1968 and 69 in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has 5 confirmed murders and 2 attempted murders, although some people think that he committed way more crimes than that, and other people think there was a group effort or team effort, multiple killers involved. And I would always like to know what you guys think about these particular challenge questions. But on the notion of the profile created by Forensic Astrologer, the first point is they believe that the Zodiac was actually a team of 2 people operating at Lake Herman Road. The Lake Herman Road murders that occurred on December 20th of 1968 were committed by a partnership. two different killers. And the second one is a little bit more technical because the Zodiac wasn't only a serial killer, he also wrote taunting letters and cryptograms, and he wrote a message on a card or he made phone calls. And the second thing that I took away from that episode is an observation that was made about the language the Zodiac used. In these letters, there are very frequent misspellings, but are they intentional or are they the genuine mistakes that were made by the letter writer? And on the Forensic Astrologer program, they proposed that they are intentional because the Zodiac is talking about certain things like building a bomb, and he wrote in one of his letters the words trigger mech, which suggests that he had some familiarity with devices and maybe even engineering. And this shows someone who was reasonably educated. They didn't get too much into whether or not he's a PhD or just a high school graduate, but they're thinking that he's somewhat of a reasonably educated guy, maybe even in a discipline like engineering. And if he can comprehend subjects like that, then he probably knew how to spell most of the words correctly. And to jump in on this, to share what I genuinely think, I do agree that the misspellings are intentional. And I think that the first one that I ever saw in the Zodiac misspellings was used actually in the first letter that said, I am responsible for I'm the killer of the two teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman, again referring to the Lake Herman Road murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. And Christmas is spelled Christ Mass. It's spelled with M-A-S-S at the end. And I thought that is most likely not a mistake, or someone didn't just space out for a second and write a second S, because it's meant to look like the words Christ Mass. And I think that is my gut instinct, and that's all I can offer it as. But I'm definitely thinking that that is an intentional misspelling, and there are other intentional misspellings in the Zodiac correspondences. So that's something else, though, that I think is perhaps even more valuable, that this is someone who is reasonably educated, maybe even has a degree in some type of engineering-related discipline. So when you think about the Zodiac suspects, not all of them were college graduates. Sometimes you will encounter Zodiac suspects that weren't even high school graduates. Going back to that list of suspects who were under the age of 18 years old even. And this program, Forensic Astrologer, was definitely steering away from that. And some of you are perhaps already seeing where this is going, even though you maybe have not heard that program yet, although I would invite you to listen to it. They're looking at perhaps a suspect like Donald Lee Cheney or Arthur Lee Allen. And they've definitely been in touch with Drew Beeson, who's the author of Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer, and the host of the Zodcast, who looks at Donald Lee Cheney as a Zodiac suspect. And there are two people participating in this program, as I said, and one of them just said flat out that the theory that she wanted to share was that Donald Lee Cheney and Arthur Lee Allen committed the Lake Herman Road murders together. But there was a little bit of a differentiation between these two people's theories. One of them is very straightforward and flat out that Arthur Lee Allen talked about being a contract killer at one point. Maybe you've even heard the story about that, that some people think that he was doing it because he was a homosexual. Arthur Lee Allen was most likely a bisexual, and he was somewhat of a reject of society, and Robert Graysmith even wrote this stuff about him, that he was dealing with a broken and shattered ego. He was once a very skilled athlete in diving and gymnastics, and he gained a bunch of weight, he lost his hair, his career never took off, and he was also a pedophile, so he is a completely undesirable individual. And some people think that Arthur Lee Allen, the prime suspect more or less, created the Zodiac Killer persona because he wanted to be remembered for something other than just being a pedophile whose life fell apart and just sank into debt buying a bunch of things that he couldn't afford. And also that he did have genuine mental issues, and he was even sent to a Atascadero State Hospital at one point. So Arthur Lee Allen could have been involved with the Zodiac murders. Firstly, starting out as just some types of discussions with Donald Lee Cheney, and I don't even know if they would have the capabilities to say why they committed the Lake Herman Road murders together, but I can guess, I repeat, guess, that it was some talk of Arthur Lee Allen becoming a contract killer, and Donald Lee Cheney saying something to the effect of, "There's no way you could actually do that." "Well, there's no way that you could actually do that, Don." And then they just go back and forth a little bit, and then after a while, they decide to turn the fantasy into a reality. They decide to turn the discussion into an actual crime, and that's why they committed the Lake Herman Road murders, which was more or less sneaking up on two teenagers in the dark and ordering them out of a car, blindsiding them, and shooting them. And if there were two shooters at Lake Herman Road, I don't think that's the most outrageous theory in the world. I'm much more curious as to the people whom they have labeled as their suspects. But how does this involve the contract killing? Well, it firstly goes to show that someone actually has done it, therefore he could have been a real contract killer. And this was the first time I've heard a Zodiac killer theory like this, that the Lake Herman Road murders were more or less human target practice, my words, not theirs. But then, the murder of Darlene Ferrin on July 4th of 1969, the Blue Rock Springs shooting, was actually a contract killing that was committed by Arthur Lee Allen, that he had been hired by somebody to take her out. And the reason why they suggested this was they're saying that David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen may have had enemies, but they most likely weren't ordered by some type of paid assassin. However, Darlene Ferrin appeared to have enemies who may have done something like that. An example that is brought up in their discussion is Darlene Ferrin's ex-husband, whom we know as Jim Phillips Crabtree, may have had some involvement with her death. I'm not accusing him of anything, but they brought up him as someone, or maybe someone who was involved with Darlene's inner circles. She was married to Dean Ferrin, and hence the change in name, but she was rumored to have had affairs. Did somebody want her taken out? And that's what the Lake, not the Lake Herman Road murders, excuse me, that's what the Blue Rock Springs shooting was all about. The concept of committing a series of unrelated murders, and only one person is the true target. The unrelated murders are just a distraction. The misspellings in the letters are just a distraction. Yes, Arthur Lee Allen would have been the Zodiac in that particular theory, and that mostly views Don Cheney as somewhat of an active participant. But who even knows who would be the planning person and that the mastermind of it all? And that one just more or less views it as a team, that there were two killers. You could even call it a very small thrill kill club, more like a thrill kill partnership that turned into an actual contract killing. And that means that they committed this series of unrelated murders, but they just blamed it on the Zodiac killer. And the Zodiac killer is almost like this type of scarecrow or straw dummy that they have set up, and everyone's trying to figure out who this person is, and it's all a distraction. Oh, it's real. Oh, it's real. They actually committed those crimes, but they just created this enormous smokescreen persona known as the Zodiac that has kept people guessing for 53 some odd years. So that was one theory that was discussed in the episode. Let's just call that theory number one, and you can share your response in the comments section down below. I've tried my best to interpret it as closely as I can, but no matter what, I would love your response to that particular theory. Arthur Lee Allen and Donald Cheney committing the Lake Herman Road murders, and then Arthur Lee Allen goes on to actually perform at least one real contract killing, the murder of Darlene Ferrin, and the other crimes are unrelated murders that are just meant to confuse the authorities. The second one, and this is perhaps a little bit more far out, or I don't know if far out's the exact word. I think that it's more like a rearranging of those particular events. Let's just say that it's rearranging it. It starts the same way. Arthur Lee Allen and Don Cheney committed the Lake Herman Road murders together. That is the same in both theories. But it's really that was Arthur Lee Allen's only real involvement in the Zodiac crimes. At that point, Donald Cheney takes over, and he is the full-on mastermind of the Zodiac world. And these are all his ideas. And they even use the word patsy, which Drew Beeson has written in his book, citing in on the Zodiac Killer, calling Arthur Lee Allen the perfect patsy. I know that they've been influenced by him in some ways. However, it's just showing that Arthur Lee Allen was a genuine participant in one of the murders, so he wasn't innocent. He did indeed do something, but from that point on, Don Cheney might just be using that as blackmail over him. I mean, this is almost like not a thrill-kill partnership, but a thrill-kill blackmail operation. So all of this suspicion is coming on to Arthur Lee Allen, and at that point, with all the little evidence they had at Lake Herman Road, Arthur Lee Allen would probably be expecting, they're not going to convict me because I didn't do the majority of the things. Everything that they're probably thinking that they have evidence on is somebody else's evidence, so he knew that he wouldn't be convicted for the crimes, and that he actually had something to do with the murder, so he can't just tell them the truth, because then no matter what, he's going to jail for life, and he's still a pedophile, and he'll be murdered in prison almost certainly. So that's more it is like the whole perfect patsy connection, but both of these shared the commonality that Arthur Lee Allen was was present at Lake Herman Road, and Donald Lee Cheney was present at Lake Herman Road, and I think both theories meet the definition of a thrill-kill partnership in some way, that for some reason Arthur Lee Allen and Donald Cheney wanted to orchestrate that particular murder, and then 7 months later the Zodiac Killer persona was born for a different motive. What do you think about either one of these? The contract killer theory, theory number one, or theory number two, the blackmail theory, the perfect patsy arrangement? And I would love to read your responses in the comments section down below. One more time, that is available on the channel Forensic Astrologer, Zodiac Killer Crime Charts, his real identity and description. And again, I really wanted to focus on the parts that were not just purely reading the star signs and actually talking about a theory that we can all discuss. So please share anything you'd like. And now I would like to give a shout out to David Gold, who is the author of the My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. I almost jumbled that one there. My Dance with the Zodiac Killer is about David Gold's claim that the Zodiac was actually a team of 3 different people. And he responded to me on the Instagram page. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio on Instagram, sharing some things about how not only was the Zodiac Killer orchestrated by the guys who escaped from Alcatraz, Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin, but they also committed the Phantom Killer murders in 1946, the Texarkana Moonlight murders. And David said, "Thank you again for presenting the cover of my book. I kind of wish you would have put it at the same time when you started talking about the similarities to the Zodiac Killer." All right, well, ask and you shall receive. And now we have a brief discussion on David Gold's theory. Let's even look at one specific example of this interconnected theory, just that the Zodiac Killer and the Phantom Killer are one and the same. The Phantom Killer was a serial killer that operated in Texarkana in 1946. Much like the Zodiac case, there are 5 confirmed victims, and the Phantom Killer wore a hood and targeted lovers' lanes, went after people who were seated in cars. Very similar crimes. The Phantom Killer also deviated from the pattern on the final crime. The Zodiac Killer would murder Paul Stein, the taxi driver, when all his previous crimes were lovers' lane killings, and the Phantom Killer would murder Virgil Starks in his home, when all his previous crimes were lovers' lane killings. So, lots of similarities. But there's a reason, though, I want to read these messages from David Gold when he talks about his suspect, Frank Lee Morris. Frank would change guns at the end of a series of murders to mislead law enforcement, and when you live in the kind of underworld that him and the Anglin brothers did, when they needed money, they will sell the gun and then go steal another one later when they needed it. Those two were shot with a .22 rifle. That is referring to Virgil Starks and Katie Starks, the same way the couple were shot at Gaviota Beach, and Frank bragged to me about these murders. And on the notion of both killers wearing the hooded mask, the mask was all about hiding identity, plus it gave them the option of being in 3 different places at one time, everyone wearing a mask, and witnesses could not figure out what was going on, although he really didn't do it this one, but that was one of the things that they would do to try and make 3 people look like one. He learned that off of watching horror movies and murder mysteries. And you can also just share some things that you think about that. But I noticed that it's a very interesting observation that the murders at Gaviota Beach, as well as perhaps the murders of Virgil Starks, Katie Starks, survived the shooting, would have been committed with a .22 caliber rifle. A lot of people think that they were committed with a .22 caliber handgun, but that is one thing that not even everybody is in complete agreement on. And again, just sharing a message from somebody. And that's what I wanted to do for this episode. I wanted to look at a lot of the comments that you guys left on some previous Zodiac Killer episodes, because you guys were asking a lot of really good questions, and I wanted to respond to them. On the notion of, was the Zodiac Killer a sexually motivated serial killer? This guy who is murdering people at lovers' lanes, sneaking up on some teenagers in the dark, one time going out in a hooded costume and stabbing the victims, one time killing a taxi driver and stealing a piece of his bloody shirt. Was he a sexually motivated serial killer, even though the victims were not molested? Wildfire99 writes, sexually motivated is right. Apparently he must have thought it was more thrilling than getting his rocks off with a girl. And this is something that I was discussing recently on the channel when I responded to the book Profiled by Mark Hewitt, that in the Zodiac Killer's first cipher, the 408 cipher, there's a line that says, to kill is the most thrilling experience. It's even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. And that is a direct sexual reference that the Zodiac is saying very clearly that there is a sexual component. So, good observation by Wildfire99. And Wildfire also has something here about the Phantom Killer Zodiac Killer connection. And these comments have been coming in because I do a regular series about the Phantom Killer now on Wednesdays, and I will be doing a new episode this week. And you can always, as I said, like and subscribe, but I will give you a heads up. I will be appearing on camera for that one, and like the way I did the last Anything Goes Friday segment. And this talks about the possibility that the Zodiac Killer and the Phantom Killer could have been one and the same. And Wildfire's suspect is, of course, Robert Ivan Nichols, and he writes, whom I believe is the Phantom Killer and the Zodiac. He was 19 years old and roughly 3 months from his 20th birthday at the time of the Phantom killings. He probably lied and said that he was a prisoner of war to throw off people just for kicks, like when he escaped and killed a guard, and said, like when he said that he escaped and killed a guard from a prison in Montana. That, of course, is talking about the suspect in the Phantom killing murders. That in the Moonlight murders, there's one suspect who is a possible German prisoner of war who got out, and he was this red-headed man who was walking around bothering people. Something that he was the Phantom Killer. But of course, Wildfire99 has identified Robert Ivan Nichols. And I just want to point out, though, that Robert Ivan Nichols was born in, 1926? Well, then, that would actually match up somewhat reasonably for the timeline of the Zodiac, because then he would have been 20 years old, or 19, just shy of his 20th birthday, and that's why the Phantom Killer is a less experienced serial killer. He's wearing even a rougher and cruder hood, which just looks like a pillowcase that has been put over his head, and holes have been cut for the eyes and the mouth, and that's all it is. And the Phantom Killer is more confrontational, he's sloppier, he gets physical with the victims. The Zodiac was very much to the point, forgive the terrible expression, but he killed the victims and he got away as quickly as possible. and or he avoided being captured as quickly as possible. Perhaps that is a fair way to put it. So I think that that is just something that might actually work out timeline wise. I mean, some people, as I said, you're proposing a suspect like Louis Myers, who was 17 years old. He wouldn't even have been born in Texarkana in 1946. He wasn't even alive yet. So you really see these discrepancies about how some people think there was a 17-year-old Zodiac, other people think that there was a 54-year-old Zodiac or a 61-year-old Zodiac. I never get over these age discrepancies. But the next comment comes to us from Charles Miller on the Zodiac News Report from July 4th, and this is one that's talking not about the age discrepancies, but about the height discrepancies. How tall was the Zodiac killer? Because after the Blue Rock Springs shooting, there's a witness description of a 5'8" perpetrator, but at the Lake Berryessa stabbing, there's a witness description of a 6-foot perpetrator. And then after the Stein murder, 5'8" again, or maybe 5'10" from Officer Falk. So how does this all connect to one particular person? Charles Miller writes, I don't agree on the 5'8" and 6-foot discrepancy being all that significant for a number of reasons. First, human beings are notoriously terrible eyewitnesses. That's why we have people regularly exonerated by DNA after an eyewitness who was positive it was them and was responsible for their incarceration, and in many cases in state execution. That's why barn owls are mistaken for cryptids. People also are largely incapable of determining things like size and height without a reference. If there was no one standing directly next to him, I could easily see how one person could think he was 5'8" and one person who was 6 feet tall. Now there's something else that we have to remember. Mike Mageau was the surviving witness from the Blue Rock Springs shooting, and he was being shot at. He didn't get a good look at the perpetrator's face. Maybe he wasn't even completely sure how tall the guy was when he estimated that he was 5'8" and said on the shorter side. And after the Stein murder, there must have been some reasonable distance between the witnesses, the Robbins kids, and the Zodiac killer, and that's why they may have thought that he was shorter because people appear shorter when they are farther away. And the reason I brought up that one is I told this story recently, but when I was just walking home one night, I saw somebody across the street, and I would have guessed that he was about 5'8" because I'm 5'8". I thought that he was my height, but once he got closer, I realized that he was much taller. Maybe how? Maybe 6 feet tall. I mean, I didn't ask or anything, but he was definitely much taller than 5'8", but he looked shorter from a distance. And the next one that I would like to go to is actually a set of 3 questions from Stefan Nyberg, and this was sent into the email address. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com, and Stefan writes, Hello, Ned. Hope all is well, and glad to see my images that I've sent came to good use on your YouTube channel. Ah, yes, Stefan provided those wonderful images with the radio. Good stuff. I've been thinking about the Zodiac's attack at Lake Berryessa a lot lately, and there are oddities with the event that I simply can't shake off my mind. And I have some questions that I haven't figured out a good answer to, but I do have a theory. Question number 1. Why did the Zodiac go from being a more or less silent killer to being a chatty guy at Lake Berryessa, taking lengthy risks to talk to Brian Hartnell as much as he did? Okay, so the Zodiac has committed 2 crimes by gun, he has shot the victims, and he ran away the first time, didn't do anything, drove away the second time, and made a phone call 40 minutes later saying that there are 2 kids shot with a 9mm Luger. I'm the one who did it. Goodbye. And that, I'm sure you've heard that at some point. Then he mails in letters and the first cipher. But why did he go from shooting the victims at Lovers' Lanes to wearing a hooded costume and stabbing them? Okay, I will attempt to answer this. I don't necessarily have a perfect answer, but one thing that people have thought about is he was inspired by the Tate LaBianca murders that had occurred in August of 1969, and maybe the just how vicious the crimes were that were committed by knife, and there was lots of publicity around them, and that he wanted to commit a crime by knife and do something more confrontational. But some people also think that the killer was simply trying to fuel his own excitement, and he's already killed twice by gun, so he wants to do something that is even more intense and more thrilling, and that's why he's going to practically turn himself into some type of comic book villain and putting on this costume. And I mean, there's a lot of guesswork, but you can always respond to any of these questions if you want in the comments section down below. Question number 2. Why did he go through the ordeal of creating the Zodiac costume if his sole purpose was just to kill? Now, I've talked about this in a couple of recent Zodiac killer news reports, and that is the theory that maybe the hood was already in existence. Maybe he didn't fabricate it himself. And welders wear a hood sometimes. Sometimes that is rather similar, and he could have just added the sunglasses and the Zodiac cross. Maybe he even knew how to sew it on himself. And so the majority of the work was already done. Firefighters as well have a hood that, in some of the photos that I've seen in the past, resemble the Lake Berryessa costume a little bit. And again, I doubt Brian and Cecilia were paying too much attention to the exact type of material. When someone has a gun in their face and then ties them up and is stabbing them in the back, these people weren't trying to memorize all of the details that were happening because they were about to be viciously attacked. So that's one thing that I've thought about. What most people say, though, is they believe that the Zodiac Killer was trying to recreate the character of Coco, the Lord High Executioner from the Mikado, because there's a hooded executioner in the Mikado, and if you haven't seen that, it's all about punishing people for flirting, and the Zodiac is targeting lovers' lanes and going after people who are in romantic situations, minus the attack on Paul Stein. So I don't know if that's exactly correct. It definitely makes sense to me that the Zodiac is trying to recreate a scene from the Mikado, but some people just simply think that maybe it's a different work of literature that inspired that, and you can always give me your answer. But question number 3. Same question as number 2, but regarding the Zodiac inventing the fake story about being an escaped prisoner and his car was hot and needed a replacement vehicle, it has struck me that the whole Lake Berryessa incident seems very much to have been prematurely scripted, i.e., scripted like from a movie or a stage play. If I recall correctly, the Zodiac didn't directly respond to Brian when Brian offered to give him his phone number. Could this be an indication that the Zodiac Killer was startled by Brian's kindness? That it was something he absolutely didn't expect to hear from his victim, and something that he hadn't thought of at all when he wrote and created the scene? What are your thoughts on the Zodiac staging and preparing the Lake Berryessa attack like a movie scene, and then simply reenacting it live? Thanks and have a great day, Stefan. Okay, so this one I think is a pretty good question because again, it does tie into that thing about being inspired by the Mikado or a different piece of literature. And some people have asked me a similar question in the past. They're saying, do you think that the whole purpose of the Zodiac crimes was to recreate or to maybe create a 4-act stage play? That's why there are 4 canonical crimes within the 12-month cycle. Someone wants to create a criminal masterpiece, actually blending the elements of fantasy and reality, and they want to turn themselves into some type of very sinister character, but in their mind, they have every right to do this. And it's like the 4 acts of a stage play. Maybe if you don't like that phrasing, 4 chapters of a book. And that they want to do something that is larger than life, but still rather pathetic, to be honest. I mean, blindsiding people who are defenseless and can't fight back. Now, on the notion of why did the Zodiac Killer have an extended conversation with the victims at Lake Berryessa, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say most people expect that that is because he was simply trying to calm them down. Some people think that there is no Montana connection at all. The Zodiac was never at Deer Lodge Prison in Montana. Other people, such as Kevin Robert Brooks, have built their whole case around that. He is the guy who proposes Donald Lee Booyock as a Zodiac killer suspect. Frank Dryman Valentine is another Zodiac suspect who was at Deer Lodge Prison. Edward Wayne Edwards. So there is some people get pulled into the Zodiac world because of this Deer Lodge connection, and then there are those who just think that it's simply a mistake or that it's not a genuine connection, that he made up a story to keep the victims in their place, saying, I'm not going to kill you, all I want is your money, and I need a car, I'm trying to get to Mexico, trying to fill their heads with the idea that they weren't going to be stabbed. Now, as to respond to this comment, could this be an indication that the Zodiac was startled by Brian's kindness? I would expect so. And other people even talked about how they thought that Brian Hartnell was an active participant in all this, that he set up the Lake Berryessa stabbing because of how he has responded. He just seems so calm and collected, and when he's in the hospital, there's a video of him saying that, he doesn't hate the killer or something similar to that. And I absolutely don't believe that Brian was an active participant, just putting that out there. I mean, he almost died, for goodness sake. Or if he were an active participant, then he probably would have arranged it in a way in which he wouldn't have been stabbed 6 times in the back. And to be fair, Stefan did not say that. That was something that was proposed to me in a different comment on BlackBoxOnlineRadio. But a lot of people have pointed out he just seemed so atypical. But as someone who follows true crime programs very frequently, this type of behavior happens all the time, where someone is trying to attack somebody and they're just really caught off guard by their reactions. Why? Because being weird is not a crime. Sometimes people are giving atypical reactions, abnormal reactions, or something that is unexpected when the perpetrator expects them to be scared and filled with terror and fear. Instead, they're just calm and collected, and they might actually be completely terrified, but they're just not showing it visibly. Now I would like to go to the next comment in question, and this comes to us from Reggie's Card Collection, and it was sent in to the Instagram page, BlackBoxNed88, and it asks something about the story of the Lake Berryessa letter, a lost Zodiac killer letter, or lost wouldn't be the appropriate term, that the authorities chose not to reveal it to the general public because of some of the circumstances surrounding Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard's death. And there's also a two-part response to this because it also deals with a story that a used condom was found near the scene at Lake Berryessa. And Reggie's Card Collection was asking me, have I ever heard of this lost letter? My answer was no. But about the condom that was found, I've heard the story that Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard went to Lake Berryessa as a genuine Lover's Lane crime. I mean, like, as a genuine Lover's Lane incident, and it turned into a crime, that they actually had consensual sex before they went to the picnic blanket that was away from the car, and that Brian Hartnell had condoms in the glove compartment and so I have heard about that. Now, as far as the first two crimes, the Lake Herman Road murders, I don't actually believe that there was any intimacy actually taking place. I mean, Betty Lou and David were on their first official date, and also based on the positioning of their car and how close it was to the road, I don't think they were in the midst of anything like that other than some very basic teenage engagement, maybe a little bit of hand holding or something like that. And as far as Darlene Ferrin and Mike Mageau, who were sitting in a car on the 4th of July, I also don't believe that they were involved in any type of intimate situation. Mike Mageau was wearing 5 shirts and 3 pairs of pants. Yeah, don't need to say anything other than that. But on a serious note, there is the claim that they didn't even go there as a real date or anything. It wasn't a romantic outing. They went there to buy drugs, and to buy marijuana and some pills, to be precise. I'm sure Mike Mageau was thinking about it. I'm sure David Faraday was thinking about it, and not gonna fault them for that. But I think that Lake Berryessa may have been the only actual Lover's Lane encounter that was interrupted. And right now I would like to get to your shout-outs on BuyMeACoffee.com, and anybody who makes a contribution to help support the show will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday. Our first one comes to us from Voodoo Baby Baby, who says, "Enjoy your many shows, Ned. You tackled a very difficult and complex subject today. You made some great points in a very limited period of time. Keep up the great work." And that is talking about the episode that I did on the military-industrial complex, which came out for the Friday segment, and it's an Anything Goes Friday where any subject is fair game. Our next comment comes to us from Sobek Lord, who says, "Enjoy the coffee, Ned. Sobek, LOTFC, Lord of the Four Corners." Sobek Lord, thank you so much. Awesome. And we have one from Floyd Black 53, who says, "Ned, I'm just learning COVID is no joke. Hope you never get it. Anyway, thanks again for all the great content." No, I haven't had COVID officially. I tested negative, but I think there was a high chance that I was positive last December. COVID is no joke indeed. My uncle and my cousin passed away from COVID, and I hope you get well soon and that everybody else is going to be doing well, and I hope that this ridiculous pandemic is going to be over in the very near future, because everybody has just had very similar experiences to mine and to what Floyd Black 53 said right there, and I cannot wait for this to end. So everybody stay safe and stay strong. But I would like to switch gears a little bit and just to talk about some of the comments that you guys left on the Anything Goes Friday segment, because I believe that some of them are true crime related, and much as Voodoo Baby Baby said, they are talking about the military-industrial complex, but true crime, and a subject such as this, can intersect at a very particular issue, and that is conspiracy theories. And I would like to begin with one of the first comments that actually comes to us again from Stefan Nyberg, who has written something out about conspiracy theories and just how they function. "Thanks, Ned, for another great episode and interesting subject. The biggest issue with conspiracy theories is that I think it is important to emphasize that they tend to narrow down a series of events into one singular explanation that in its entirety lacks proof. However, this is not to say that there can't exist elements within a conspiracy theory that potentially could be true. In regards to for-profit warmongering, I certainly agree that there will always be businesses who benefit immensely from a war. In World War II, for example, there were private corporations on both the Allies and Axis sides that made a fortune on providing products and services to governments that were directly or indirectly used in the war. But I'd like to respond to the first part of the comment here about this, how a conspiracy theory tends to narrow down a series of events into one singular explanation. In doing so, what people often overlook, and Stefan did not do this, he did this very well, but some people tend to neglect the fact that conspiracy theories often use real facts. And I even remember when people would be watching Alex Jones on YouTube years and years ago, back in my day when people were watching Alex Jones and InfoWars on YouTube, that they would talk about, okay, everybody says this guy is wrong, but most of the time he's just giving facts. And how is that possible? Conspiracy theorists use real facts. It's just they connect them together with sometimes fictitious material, or sometimes they're using real facts to achieve an inappropriate conclusion. And an example of this would be what Alex Jones used to talk about, how, okay, there are these world tragedies that happen, and these are the ways that our leaders are lying to us, and even providing documentation on how the leaders are lying to us. Therefore, that means that there is some type of deeply guarded cabal that is running the world and masterminding all world events because they want to destroy humanity. They are the globalists, the tyrants, and the social engineers. So it's almost like jumping to conclusions, or there are even some more specific mechanisms that are used by conspiracy theorists. And I have a whole episode about this called The Psychology of Conspiracy Theories, and one of them was identified by Kurt Eichenwald, who wrote for Newsweek, by saying, "A common tactic is to first state a fact that is true, state a real fact, and then explain the grand conspiracy." like talking about, oh, maybe these businesses are all on the same side during the war. Therefore, once again, they were trying to create this cabal that wants to destroy humanity because they're the globalists, the tyrants, and the social engineers. You can begin with something that is rather well grounded in documentation, and then expand into something that is very theoretical and not well grounded into documentation, and also pointing out about how there are all these different events that go on and this take place, and that this world leader met with this person, therefore they must be part of the same secret society. These come up all the time, and believe it or not, this is Zodiac related. How many times has this happened in the world of the Zodiac killer, where they say that, oh, somebody had a particular type of cross on their car. Somebody had a circle with a cross going through it. Therefore, they are a white supremacist. They are satanic. They hate women. And they also just want to destroy humanity because it's fun. Not the way that the Zodiac killer did. No, They want to do this in a different way. Something more like Rosemary's Baby. Yes, but I definitely give the conspiracy theorists some credit. They capture my attention. The next comment comes to us from Sobek Lord, who says, Happy Friday, Ned. Thanks for the food for thought and enjoy the coffee. Unfortunately, the military-industrial complex has existed pretty much since societies formed. Warfare and violence, the darlings of imperial power, were ever present elements of a classical civilization. The classical war machine recruited and trained and efficiently extinguished countless lives, young and old. Ancient warfare was an immensely effective means of acquiring resources, and many strong city-states engaged in battles to affirm rights to wealth and property. The Greco-Roman world embraced war, even to the point of making it a god. Even though by today's standards, it is difficult to imagine the carnage for some larger battles. For example, at Cannae, Cannae, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, where the Roman army suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of Hannibal, roughly 70,000 soldiers died. To put it another way, the Romans lost more sons in a single day on the battlefield than America lost in roughly a decade of war in Vietnam. And citing this, the majority of that comment was written by D.C.A. Hillman, The Chemical Muse, pages 26 to 27. And the Sobek Lord adds an original comment saying, This is why we need checks and balances. And on to the next comment. It is from Professor Japanese 007, who says, The military-industrial complex? I didn't hear your video, Ned. Didn't hear it yet. But it's not the military-industrial complex. It's the military-industrial temporal empire. And before I go any further, and it says temporal, I mean, I think that is meaning in the tradition of the Templars. Professor Japanese can correct me if I've misstated, but like the Knights Templar and so on. In just one case is because this is just fact. So Professor Japanese also says, cool topic off of the Zodiac. And yes, any subject is going to be fair game on the Anything Goes Friday segment, so you can always tune in and hear some more about that. And I'm always open to talking about different types of subjects. And I'll be doing the Phantom Killer series for a little while this year. However, that is going to end at a certain point, and I'll expand upon some other subjects, and maybe I can even pull you guys again and hear about the exact things that you would like for a new Wednesday show, but I'm always open to talking about different cases. We have one from Jeff Jones who says, True about the bizarre connections to using intellectuals. However, some people use that to try and negate what happens to be because to be wise and critical of something on their opposition side. Now, what is he talking about? I made a comment that one thing that is heavily, heavily neglected from these conspiracy theory discussions, or even just mainstream thought, is that governments, organizations, perhaps like entities such as the CIA, they sponsor and promote intellectuals to influence the way people think. And it's not even that the person may have had their ideas written for them by the CIA and they're just a mouthpiece. They may genuinely believe what they're saying, but they've been sponsored by the CIA because their agenda is beneficial to the agenda of whoever's behind the decision making at the CIA for the current time. And there are countless examples that can be found throughout media sources, and I have other episodes of Black Box Online Radio here talking about some. But also, this is something that has been going on for centuries. I mean, even some of the examples about how the French Enlightenment was completely orchestrated by the oligarchs of Venice, particularly through the individual Abate Antonio Conti, who was, again, just responsible for the promotion and manipulation of how people perceived the French intellectuals at the time, les philosophes, and these people such as Voltaire and de Montesquieu and Rousseau, that their belief systems and the ideas that they promoted in their philosophical writings were beneficial to the oligarchs of Venice, and they were promoted and supported by financial backers, whereas people who had conflicting viewpoints and ideas did not, and they did not receive the same type of mainstream exposure. And a lot of it's controversial, and a lot of it's trusting some things that the historians say, but I definitely get curious about these claims. Aaron Aragon writes, War's a Racket by Smedley D. Butler sums up the war games of nations rich enough to play them. I'm 63 and lived through the Reagan military buildup of $600 wrenches and $2,000 coffee pots. Cocoon behind the veil, a phony patriotism, the Defense Department gets a free pass from the American people, who later complain that the war refugees pour in and get free stuff. War's indeed a racket. Continue to tie yellow ribbons around it. Well, there's definitely some for-profit warmongering going on in some ways, and there's also excessive spending and so on. And I think that those are perhaps the real discussions that people should have. And by people, I mean those who truly understand that exact idea much better than I do, who understand military spending and government spending way more so than I can, but I will talk about conspiracy theories and true crime until the cows come home. Thank you so much for listening to this episode here, and thank you once again to the program Forensic Astrologer, as well as everybody who left comments on this episode. I really wanted this one to be more of a Q&A session or responding to the questions that you guys had been sharing with me. So thank you so much to everyone who left comments, and if you leave a comment, you might be mentioned in a future episode of Black Box Online Radio. So everybody, please have a good week, and I will see you on, actually tomorrow for the episode about the Swindle Murders bonus episode of Black Box Online Radio. Anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and there is always BlackBoxNet88 over on Instagram, and I will see you over there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.